Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. We are starting our new topic today, World War One, and I'm going to try as best as possible to do at least a 15-minute audio cast for each day of the notes. I will update you guys on what's coming in terms of assignments a little later today. We're definitely going to do another DBQ that will be graded, and we will have another assignment as well. Keep in mind the quarter ends next Tuesday, March 31st. We will most likely be taking our World War One test on that day. So that is the plan. 6 days of World War One, Monday through Friday with the following Monday, and then Tuesday, a Google form test on World War One. So let's get into this. Now, the years of World War One is 1914 to 1918. The Treaty of Versailles, which ends the war, is 1919. So most of our focus in this unit will be those years, but there will be some talk of things that kind of either led to the war or helped set the stage for the war that happened before those years. Okay, so let's go to our next slide. So America as a world power. We talked a lot about this during the 1890s chapter, which was imperialism and the Spanish-American War. America is now the #1 producing country in terms of manufacturing in the world. We don't just want to sell our products inside our country, we want to sell them outside our country. In order to do that, you need enough power behind you in order to enforce the movement of your goods and your people around the world. Now, the world is truly getting more global, meaning the entire world is becoming more connected. Now, we obviously don't have the plane and commercial aviation yet, but we do have some amazing technology in shipping that really starts to cut down the time that it takes to travel around the world. Okay, put the telegraph in and then of course the telephone, and we're really speeding up the rate of communication, which does of course lead to more business, and of course that can lead to more war. Now, I mentioned during that imperialism chapter that we were kind of setting the stage with those 6 major world powers, because those 6 major world powers are going to take part in the next 2 world wars that are coming, World War I and then World War II. So let's just go through this slide really quick. We are pushing ahead of Britain and France. We're bigger than them, we're producing more than them, and we're also uniquely situated where America is in the world. Thousands of miles of Atlantic on the right, thousands of miles of Pacific on the left. It keeps us out of the daily mess that Europe was involved in, and it makes us stronger while it makes them weaker. So you put Germany, France, and Britain in Europe, you have Russia, and you have Japan, and then you have us. Okay? Now, look at this quote here by Woodrow Wilson. Since the manufacturer insists on having the world as a market, the flag of his nation must follow him, and the doors of nations which are closed against him must be battered down. Okay? Now, I think that really sums it up. If you want the world as your market, then you must have your flag represented in those countries in order to trade with them. Now, remember, I always talk about things in terms of idealism and realism. So the idealistic version of this is that we are going to go out into the world and become more of an activist power because we are bringing democracy and capitalism and equality and freedom and business and opportunity to these other countries. Some might also argue Christianity. All right. On the flip side to that, you are basically sticking your beak into countries that did not invite you there for one reason or another, whether it be to trade with their country or trade from their country, whether it be to exploit their natural resources in the case of China and Latin America. All right. So there's the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to American foreign policy. And this is really going to set the foreign policy debate for the next, until today, really. Should we be isolationist? Should we be interventionist? Does America gain more when it goes out into the world and make the world safer? Or does it actually take away from America because it spreads our resources thin and we don't focus as much on the problems inside the country? Okay? Now, first up, Panama Canal. We know that Teddy Roosevelt is a big, tough guy. He loves big projects, big wars, big ideas. Okay, that's him. He's got a big persona. So, just like he looked at corporations as good and bad, he's also going to look at different countries as good and bad. And sometimes those are going to conveniently allow him to kind of muscle up on certain countries. Now, this is where the whole idea of speak softly and carry a big stick comes from. Okay? So just think about that quote for a second. It's be kind, be respectful, be courteous, but if you need to, use your power and throw your weight around. And that really, really is appropriate for, I think, Teddy Roosevelt's personality. So, he is going to engineer the separation of Panama from Colombia to construct a canal linking the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans for commercial and naval vessels. Remember, there's a tie-in between commercial for trade and naval for the military protection of that trade around the world. Now, as the other countries are doing the same thing, that is where both cooperation and conflict can take place. Those you trade with, you let them pass on the open seas. Those that you don't trade with, perhaps you get into conflict with them. Okay? Now I'm going to forward to this map right here, and I believe you can see my cursor. So between the tip of Colombia and the tip of Panama, you have a very, very thin 10-mile zone called the Canal Zone, which they are going to cut through in connecting the Atlantic Ocean. Here you see Florida and Georgia and South Carolina, all the way around past Mexico and up into California. You go this way, you can trade with Europe. You go this way, you can trade with Asia. Without this, you have to go all the way around the tip of South America. I believe it cut 8,000 miles off of the trip. So the ability to mobilize your merchant ships quickly, as well as your naval ships quickly, is going to be greatly, greatly enhanced by the building of the Panama Canal. Okay? Now, Panama gave the U.S. the right to construct and operate the Canal Zone, that 10-wide strip of land. Remarkable feat of engineering, the largest construction project in history to that date. And America is within our DNA. We were builders. Okay? We built the world's biggest cities. Manhattan went as high up into the sky as any other city could have ever dreamed. The transcontinental railroads building over rivers and mountain ranges, and this is going to be no different. We are going to be remarkable when it comes to building new things. Immigrant labor, 60,000 workers, so opportunity for them. Go down, build something, make money, help your country, see the world, that kind of thing. 1903 to 1914, the canal reduced the sea voyage between the east and west coast of the United States by 8,000 miles. It's not even out of the realm of possibility that something that was traded from New York for California would sail through the Panama Canal rather than being shipped over the transcontinental railroads, which were still rather, unreliable and slow at the time. This is really going to change east to west travel in a major way. All right. Now, 1977, Jimmy Carter is going to negotiate the treaty, giving the Canal Zone back to Panama in the year 2000. Now, that is not exactly an act of charity. That is because with the advent of commercial aviation, we no longer need the canal because most of our most of our trade is going to start to be done by plane rather than boat. So, yes, we give it back. We pat ourselves on the back for doing so, but it's really more a matter of the fact that we didn't really need it anymore. Okay? This is a picture of the Canal Zone today. Again, this is a picture of the map, cutting basically the North American and South American continents, the connecting point between them, in half. So if Mexico and those countries in there are Central America, we are basically snipping a thin piece of land between Central and Latin America, or Central and South America, in half and able to get our ships through. All right, last but not least for today is going to be the Roosevelt Corollary. Now, if you remember back to 1823, James Monroe and the Monroe Doctrine. And what the Monroe Doctrine was is that Europe should stay on their side of the pond and we will stay on our side of the pond. George Washington, in his farewell address, said, "Beware of getting involved in foreign European entanglements." America was trying to do something different. We left Europe to get away from the European craziness. Constantly fighting, persecution, lack of opportunity, and now, all right, we don't want the same thing coming here. One ocean on one side is a buffer, one ocean on the other side is a buffer. So the Monroe Doctrine is the first piece of foreign policy, if you will, to warn Europe to stay on their side. Now, Europe at the time, the France, the Spains, the Britons, the Belgiums, the Germans, are in a race for colonial powers, meaning that they are trying to exploit places like the Caribbean, Mexico, Latin America for their gain. Now, that poses a threat to us because as the closer they are on our side of the world, the more problems that they could bring to us and the more war that we would potentially get dragged into. Now, I believe you remember I said we don't really have the teeth to enforce it at the time in 1823. Now we do. All right? So Roosevelt is going to pick up that mantle and he is going to start to refer to the US as having the right to exercise an international police power. And what do the police do? They surveil, they observe, they enforce. So he now intends that when Europe comes over here to cause problems in Latin America, that America now has the right to protect its hemisphere of the world and keep Europe out. So the Roosevelt Corollary, I like to think of it as an addition to the Monroe Doctrine, as strengthening that they should stay on their side and we should stay on our side. Now, as a result, we are going to start to intervene in the affairs of the Dominican Republic and Cuba and Venezuela, all with the intention to protect American and European business interests and investments. We want governments that are friendly to us. We want to trade with those countries, but more with those countries in Latin America, we want their resources. We want our American businesses to be allowed to go and operate there under the protection of a government that is friendly to us. Okay, so it's sort of interesting that while the progressive presidents are cleaning up the cities and limiting corporations in America from hurting people, they didn't exactly see people as having the same value necessarily in the cities of some of these other countries. Because in the cities of the Dominican Republic and Venezuela and Cuba, the people are mostly poor, and the governments and the corporations are mostly taking advantage of them. So it's a bit of a hypocritical stance here, but it is the way that the world thought. There were civilized people, there were uncivilized people, and uncivilized people needed to be told what to do by civilized people. Now, William Howard Taft, which is going to be the president after Teddy Roosevelt, also has the same ideas of intervention in Latin America. He called his dollar diplomacy. So the Roosevelt Corollary and dollar diplomacy is basically meaning that America will now get more involved in Latin American affairs, whether it be for democracy, whether it be for commercial interests, whether it be for strategic advantage in potential military conflict to come. But we are a world power, and we are going to start to push our weight around the world, all right? And it is all of these countries thinking that way that is going to ultimately lead us into World War I and then World War II, all right? So that's what we have for today. I'm going to be putting this up on my YouTube channel in a few moments, and then I will get it up to you guys on Google Classroom. My recommendation is that you read through the slides as you listen to this audio cast. It's under 15 minutes. It shouldn't take you too long. More information to follow, but remember, quarter ends next Tuesday on the 31st. Test on Tuesday on the 31st. We will wrap things up on Monday. I will be scheduling Google Meet times for each class individually so that we can get in front of each other and ask questions and do a little bit more interactive discussion. Okay, I hope you're all well. Keep your heads up, and I will speak to you soon.